Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Legion. A fantastic season finale. A lot of stuff went down in this episode we're going to have to break down. First of all, let's talk about the battle between Farouk and David. I just kind of love it. It's like almost like a music video. They're singing, marching up, well, floating, levitating towards each other. And then the battle takes on this like psychic plane battle, almost like it's animated and stuff like that. I thought that was so sick. Also got to give major props to Lenny. She is quite a sharpshooter. Where the hell did that come from? Was that just kind of in her wheelhouse from the beginning? Was it something when David implanted the thoughts about what to do? Did he implant that into her? Like, what's her whole thing? Like, how does she know how to freaking do that? Because she did two sharpshooter shots. One was hitting the choke. That worked. Which a question I had last episode, I was curious, like, whether it was just affecting psychic mutants. It's like, no, it affects all mutants' abilities. Two was a shot against Sydney's bullet, which I know, like, I'm skipping around, but I was like, that's an impressive shot. That gun was, like, mid-fire. The bullet was already out, and you, like, sharp shot that. And I was like, how did you do that? And she was high at the same time, too, because after the first shot, she started getting high. So it was kind of interesting that she was still able to have that much deadly accuracy in that moment. That was crazy. But when it came down to it, like, I love that. Like, without powers, David just beat the living crap out of Farouk. And then you had two things I wasn't expecting. Sydney to pop up with the Minotaur's head in hand and having both her arms. I was so certain. I was like, oh my God. I was so certain that was when she was going to get her arm, like, ripped off or something. It's like, nope, Minotaur's dead. So that was pretty badass. She comes out, got a gun pointed to David. Did not see that coming. And like, I wasn't expecting her to be like so quick on a draw. But then again, it's like after everything just kind of stacked up last episode, no matter, even if it was coming from Farouk, I'm sure that still wouldn't. Well, she knows it was coming from Farouk because she's like, yeah, he showed me. So maybe, the other Carrie informed her about the whole Farouk situation. Potentially, I don't know. Or maybe from the very beginning, she kind of figured out that it was Farouk in Melanie's body showing her all that. Maybe it kind of pieced together to her, but it didn't matter because it was still true. And for her, it's kind of like all the stuff. She's like, you're not a good person. I thought you were. The fact of the matter is, you're not the hero in this story. You're just another villain. You're the villain, It's like Farouk might be a bad guy, but you're worse. All that he's done, torturing Oliver, killing the people at Division, like being happy. It was like, no, I was in control. Right, because she used the example of like the son of Sam. It's like, oh, what he said a dog gave him those orders, but he was still the one to pull the trigger. Because she kind of compared herself to like even wives who were married to serial killers, even though they don't want to see it, they know on some level they just might not be able to be willing to see it. And it's kind of sad. She sees David as that. She sees him as a serial killer, like, oh, like I'm married to a monster. I just wasn't willing to see it, but now I see you for who you really are. I can't unsee your real face. I was like, that sucks, dude. But David messes with her memory. In that moment he did, I was like, oh, that's super shady. Especially later on when they had sex. She calls him out for it later on. But even I was like, oh, that's gross, dude. Don't do that. But it's like, it's that sad thing of like, for him, it's like he feels like this is the only chance. Like, I can fix this. I can make everything better. I can make Sydney love me. She loves me. I just got to, she forgot. So obviously I got to remind her. But it's like, obviously you went about it a super scummy, just not a pretty disgusting way. But it's at the same time, it's just kind of like, and it's even something she was tackling on. She said it even, Farouk kind of said as Melanie was kind of like, maybe it's not even his fault. The fact is he had Farouk running around in his head for like 30 years. It's enough to kind of make you not really know the difference. Maybe you don't know the difference between truth and lies, especially because you've lived your entire life thinking you're crazy. Do you have other people telling you you're not crazy? So obviously it's hard to distinguish between what's truth and lies. So maybe that has become a character flaw of his because of everything that he's been through. And I don't know, man, it's just sad that things kind of came down to this. I do love that Carrie kept gloating about the fact this is like, yeah, we fought a Minotaur. It's like, and the other Carrie's like, yeah, I know, you told me over and over again. Also, it's interesting because I didn't even think about it until David pointed out. It's like he didn't actually have to go to the White Room. He doesn't need it to be the place where him and Sydney can meet. It's like, no, he can project himself in this world without just having to go to like an astral plane, like how Oliver had the ice cube, like he has the White Room. So it's like he doesn't need that anymore. He can just project his mind here in this world and presenting himself to Sydney. So what I'm really interested by is like Farouk, like a lot of stuff, because Farouk says some interesting things, like the whole like, oh, like you can't force someone to love you. It's like, how would you know? It's like, oh, I've tried to do it for you for 30 years. I guess it's because I mean, because that was kind of, I mean, when you actually think about it in the grand scheme of things, that is what he was trying to do the entire time. He's like, I want you, me and you, we can be together. Love me. You know, it's kind of like we can work together. We can become a god ourselves. We can challenge God ourselves. That was kind of his whole pitch last season. So it's kind of like, I guess in retrospect, it's kind of like, yeah, on some level, you were trying to get him to love you. But what's kind of interesting to me was the tear he shed at the end. Was that because you act like on some twisted level, do you actually care about David and you don't want him to see going on that terrible route? I don't understand Farouk. He's such like an enigma to me. It's like, I don't get what your whole thing, like what that tear was about. Is it because he legitimately thought like, oh, because to him, it's like, no, they still need me because I'm valuable. Like the fact is they'll just lock me up in a deep, dark basement. Sure, but they won't kill me. So is it that, like, you know, the potential of potentially dying, is that what it is? Or knowing what he'd have to do? Or maybe when he says that, maybe he is talking from personal experience in the sense of maybe he was exactly in David's shoe, that there was a woman that he loved long ago that he tried to get to love him as well, and it didn't work out. And so seeing David just made him remember his own past. Maybe something like that. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, I feel like maybe there was sincerity in what he said about the whole loving David situation. It's like, you, my baby, you know? So it's kind of like, I mean, I guess because he's been inside with David since he was a kid. So he's watched David grow up. So I guess it's like David's just as much a part of him as he is a part of David. So that's why it kind of hits him that way. Maybe it's kind of a side effect of having spent so much time with David that he does care about him like that. I don't know. But the fact is the headband went a little haywire. I'm not sure whether that was like pure sheer will of his own, Farouk's, or was that because Fukuyama has eyes everywhere. So he probably figured out like what was kind of going on. Carrie kind of figured what was going on. So maybe like that. I don't know, because Carrie found out what David did first. And then like Sydney got her memory back because Farouk, I want to say it was probably Farouk's sheer will of his own. I don't know. Like I said, Fukuyama has eyes everywhere, but even he can't see what's not physically there. You know, David was there, astral projecting. So I don't know. Nevertheless, it is sad that things ended the way they did with David kind of getting locked up. And I love that whole. I'm skipping around. I forgot to go back to it, but the whole like thing inside of David's head where there's the two other Davids. You had one David being like, oh, a delusion starts off like anything, like an idea, like an egg. Every delusion starts off like an egg. I was like, oh, and he's treating Sydney like the delusion. It's like that moment you met her. It's like, oh, she tried to tell you, oh, this is how you should be good. Oh, God loves sinners. But the fact of the matter is, what were you, like a piece of shit before or something like that? It's like, no. So it's like, it's saying that basically that this entire time he's been swept up in this delusion that it's Sydney, that basically she put this perspective of like, oh, you should be this, that, oh, you're this and that she put so much on him to be something that he's not, rather than just being himself. And so he's every step of the way he's been falling for that delusion. I thought that was such an interesting aspect, because at the same time it's kind of hard to say like whether that's real or not, because the fact of the matter, I mean, that's the whole concept of the show, but it's like he has the two competing Davids, one being like, nah, screw that. You were the kid that was abandoned by your parents that everyone thought was mentally ill. People treat you like you're a common used condom stuck to their shoes, and they want you to be this, they want you to be that, and then the moment things aren't really there, it's like, no, bump that. You're a god. You don't need them. You know, you should be kind of running it. You're both kind of on the same wavelength. They're just kind of about a different perspective. And like I said, that's something I like that this season has been feeding into. And that kind of becomes a culmination of everything. It's like David is legitimately sick. Once again, I brought it up last episode because to me, that's something David brought up in season 1. You guys are so certain that I'm a mutant, but how do you know I'm not crazy? Because the fact of the matter is everyone, even herself, like everyone thought, I was like, oh, this is Farouk. This is David's his abilities as a mutant. But it's like, at no point did they ever really consider the possibility maybe he is a mutant with a little bit of crazy mixed in, that he is legitimately crazy. Like, that never crossed their minds. And even last season, we probably saw hints of it with that whole, well, I mean, in retrospect, they kind of gave it a different perspective, but obviously there's stuff hinted at last season. It's kind of saying like, oh, if you look at it this way, it's like, oh, that shows you that he was, not showing his real face. Even the whole like trying to understand the whole Farouk thing, was that really his consciousness, or was that just kind of like part of his illness manifesting itself and just a way that just happened to be positive? Maybe it's like his psychosis was kicking in and being like, no, there's already enough voices in your head, get Farouk the hell out type of thing, you know? Or maybe that was legitimately his consciousness trying to fight back. Maybe Farouk leaving kind of brought the voices out. Like, cause, I mean, it seemed, because it's gotten so much more powerful since Farouk, because he didn't see all these other Davids until this season. So it's post, like, you know, Farouk getting kicked out of his head. So it's kind of like maybe Farouk being in his head kind of kept the insanity kind of in check potentially, maybe. I don't know, because it's like one insanity versus another, you know? One that's just an active insanity that's your own, while another one is just kind of beating against your brain, you know? So it's such a fascinating thing. And that ends up being the thing, like, Sydney and everyone is like, no, you're sick. But he's like, no, you told me this. You told me I was a mutant. The fact is, it's like, no, this is Farouk's fault. It's like, no. And Sid brings it up. It's like, you drugged me and then has sex with him. He's like, no, it's just come. Once again, like, it's sad because in his, like, it was misguided and fucked up, sure. But in his own fucked up way, he was like, because he thought, no, I can fix it all because. And it is kind of something he hits on, because they hit on some like minority shit. It's like, you're blaming me for a crime I haven't even committed. It's like, oh, you saved like Farouk's, and all this says that I'm gonna commit these crimes in the future. It even said, you know, first said, it's like the person she trusts most is herself. You know, it's like, yes, it takes a very cold person to do this to the person that they used to love, but if it means saving the world, then it means saving the world. Those sacrifices that have to be made. And it's kind of interesting that even David tried to point out, like, you're the one that told me to do all of this in the first place, that the fact of the matter is I should like do kind of whatever it is to, you know, to save love. But once again, it's the thing of like, you're not really fighting for love. It even had this line from Farouk where he's like, he's so sad because it's like, oh, a sweet child, a sweet boy destroyed by revenge, essentially, you know? So, but then for David, it's a situation of like, no, I am a good person. I deserve to be loved. Like, I'm curious, is that him completely dropping that? Like, I think that's what that is when he finally goes, you know what? I'm done with this. I think I guess you could make the argument, and the other Davids are both there smiling. I guess it's him crushing that quote unquote delusion that was Sydney. Whatever was keeping him being a good guy, maybe like he just destroys all that. He's just like, you know what? I'm just going to be me. Whatever that is, it is what it is. I mean, it's kind of interesting because you also have to think about everything like in the different realities of how things kind of played out, like not really having Sydney in his life. Once again, there's still that reality where he was happy and married and had kids. So how differently things could have played out. So that on some level, maybe he legitimately is a good guy. It's hard to tell. Like I said, I've never seen a story turn on its like hero that like so hard to be like, no, he's actually like the super bad guy, which is crazy considering the fact. I mean, I guess even considering who his dad is, I guess it shouldn't be too surprising. I mean, who your parents are doesn't necessarily dictate everything. It's that nurture versus nature situation. And once again, his nurture situation wasn't that great. His nature situation wasn't that great considering he had a parasite in his head. And it's almost like we're complete. I mean, even they're admitting like, yeah, Farouk had fault in this, but a lot of stuff that happened is all on David too. It's like, because even though Farouk's evil, he is the lesser of two evils, which I guess kind of exists in this situation, but still. I mean, and that's the sad thing about it is like, I'm curious, like, and that's the question, like, and it's something that Melanie and Oliver were talking about, which I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Basically, you hard cut 3 years into the future. Basically, they're chilling in his ice cube. I do like that. I guess because on an astral plane, time passes in such a way that you kind of forget words and stuff like that. Because even she's only been there for like 3 years, but even Melanie's starting to forget stuff, like forget words. It's like, oh, what's the word we're looking for? Because like Oliver's like, oh, you know, all the hair we were missing being apart. It's like, no, the word you're looking for is time. It's like, right, time is what we were wasting, you know. And they were having trouble remembering, you know, both the Carries and Sydney. It's like, whatever happened to her? It's like I guess this is the betrayal she was talking about. Maybe she was talking about all the stuff that, you know, Sydney was kind of like calling David out for, but also this betrayal, like making her forget so that she would love him again. Which once again, not justifying what he did. I understood where it came from. It was still a shitty thing to do. But it's that question of like, oh, what made David into the monster? It's like he heard his future. And I was like, But yeah, that's the point. You're punishing him for something that who's to say that this isn't some cycle? That the fact of the matter is there's always a future Sid that basically, leads things to kind of be where they are, and present day Sid shows him what he's supposed to be in the future, tells him who he's supposed to be. And that's the whole thing. It's like, you're telling me to be a good guy, but now you've all determined that I'm a bad guy because of something that's not even happening yet, stuff that I haven't even done yet. You're putting me in this corner and just assuming it to all be true. But the fact of the matter is, who's to say time can't be changed? You think time is one way, like couldn't be different ways? Maybe the only reason why future Sid thinks this is the only way because the future Sid that came to her, that just all trickled down from her future Sid in her respective timeline, felt that was the only way. So it's just kind of in this endless cycle. And so I am curious to know, like, obviously there is like a 3-year gap between now and where Melanie and Oliver are in the future. That makes you wonder, like, I mean, once again, like she still has both her arms, but that doesn't mean she just won't lose it later on. David hasn't gone completely evil, so maybe that's a situation of like that. My question is like, who's to say certain things didn't change a little bit this timeline? Maybe because David did know, because Sydney did know and tried to kill him, maybe that led to him doing things a little bit differently, having a different approach, or maybe this all played out just the way it did for original Sid. Like I said, maybe it's all feeding this loop. We don't know. We do know he leaves with Lenny, and it's like, oh, what about Blondie? There is no more Blondie, which that was pretty badass. Like when he was escaping, he's like, you know what, I'm done with this. Which I think that says a lot too. He could have easily killed you all if you kind of think he is the bad guy you claim him to be. He didn't kill all of you when he had the chance, when he had the power, because I didn't see Farouk stepping up to stop him when he escapes. Because I think David's just so much more powerful than they expected him to be. And so, like, his arms are moving rapidly like that. He breaks out of the force field and then, like, teleport. I love just, like, the effect of when he goes into Lenny's cell, that kind of, like, vibrating space and time. And then grabs her and the bullets come flying and they leave. And the final lines of the season are like, so what do we do now? We pray. I guess pray that they're wrong, or pray that on some level that David is a good. Once again, it's like, the argument could be made that you made this monster, that maybe by treating him like the monster that you believe he's going to be because of something in the future, like I said, time is malleable. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe things work differently in this universe. Maybe, I mean, everyone has their perception of time being kind of this fixed thing, but maybe things can change and maybe things will. Or maybe we will get the same outcome we got, was that last episode where we saw David with his hair swooped up and Lenny mouthful of blood, and like, it seems like we're kind of heading down that direction. So, I mean, to be fair, Farouk is still alive in this timeline, so things are already different. And it's even interesting because even Melanie's like, oh yeah, the world it's not going, it's still out there. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter is still that whole struggle of good versus evil. I mean, we're not a part of it. I mean, we're so done with that. It's kind of like, which is kind of sad because in a way, it's kind of like, well, you guys kind of helped things kind of escalate to this point. Not like you both are innocent in this whole situation. The same argument could be made for you. Everything that kind of is on David's hand kind of falls on yours for kind of helping Farouk kind of do things along this way. So it's kind of sad that you, quote unquote, get your happily ever after while the Earth's kind of screwed over. So I don't know. That's how I feel about it, at the very least. Like I said, a crazy season finale. Legion has been renewed for a 3rd season, which I'm super excited to see what they do with season 3. Because now when you look at it in retrospect, a lot of that stuff in those alternate realities, like the whole Dancy Mouse situation, it's just funny that it came back in a way, because it's like, oh, Farouk talking to the mouse. Then there's the whole like David on the run and Division hunting him. It's like, well, that kind of exists now in this timeline. So, and this is also like, oh, what if David was kind of like the bad guy? Like that timeline existed as well. I mean, that was more so Farouk, but still, I'm curious. I'm so excited to see what happens going forward. Because the whole thing, what's interesting too is, let's not forget, even though it hasn't really come up, it's like Lenny isn't 100% Lenny. There's still some Amy in there. Like, I don't know if she's completely gone, or we still see her kind of pop up from time to time in Lenny's head or something like that. But what that means going forward for her, I mean, for Lenny, it kind of works out for her because it's like, oh yeah, she loves David. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, so it's just you and me now. Hell yeah, let's party it up. We might see them kind of party it up more and stuff like that while being hunted by Division 3. Also, like Ptolemy's situation, like what's that mean? What's that going to be like going forward? Him still being a part of like the mainframe and everything, because we have not seen him since that episode he warned David about where to find Farouk's body and stuff like that. There's also the I mean, with the whole his dad, we already know. Like, I don't have to beat around the bush. It's Professor X. The wheelchair was shown in season 1, but the fact of the matter is, like, I doubt we'd get that crossover just because the movies and stuff like that. Because Professor X is such a, hell, I don't know. You never know with stuff like this. I mean, because if they did, it probably also had to be like, so where did this take place in the X-Men universe? Like, what time period exactly? So I'd also be curious to see, like, if that does manifest more, like, or will we see more Davids going forward? We saw 2 this time. I mean, it's actually interesting because when you actually think about it in retrospect, it's like, oh, we got the one David last season. Now we've got, well, the one other David last season. Now we got 2 other Davids. Interestingly enough, red, green, and yellow. I'm sure there's some, like, heavy symbolism there, like green being go, yellow meaning slow down, red being completely stop. I'm sure there's, like, something you can really, like, piece together by that. Like, I think you can. It seemed like green was the one that was all kind of more go, go, go. No, they kind of all were. I don't know. Maybe that's just me overthinking it. It's just kind of interesting that, maybe that's just meant to be, I'm sure, like I said, there's a deeper metaphor, but it's also probably just kind of distinguished between the 3 Davids and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see, like, what going forward would you see even more of them? Like I said, because I don't know that much about David's story in the comic book. So, like, I assumed he was a hero, but maybe he is a bad guy. Maybe that's just some stuff that they're doing for the comic book, the TV show. Maybe in the comic book he is outright a hero. Maybe he might have a Wolverine thing going on where he's kind of an anti-hero. Well, Wolverine's the best example considering the whole mutant situation. I guess Deadpool type of thing too. Well, yeah, let's not forget about that. Deadpool's crazy too, and he exists in this universe because it's like the whole Fox, Marvel stuff. So, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting to think about. There's that whole situation too. I love that line from Carrie being like, "Oh yeah, like that." There what was that boat of, like, ship of fools where people went out to look for their sanity, men who were insane looking for their sanity, but all of us who stayed back on land, oh, look at those idiots. But it's like, we always assume that we're, the sane ones, but who's to say we're not just insane too? So it's kind of like, I guess it makes the whole perspective kind of being like, oh, David might not be the only one that's under some delusion of you're not willing to see yourself. Your brain can't comprehend the thought of seeing yourself the way we see you. You're only able to see yourself as you want to see yourself, as the good guy. And like I said, maybe with the line of just kind of like him kind of shaking it out of himself and just being like, you know what, I'm done. Kind of seems like he's kind of kicking that aside. So I'm kind of doing whatever the hell he wants to, kind of living it up type of thing. So, like I said, biggest worry would be like Farouk, but I wonder, like, even at his best, could Farouk, especially if David's kind of unhinged at this point in time, like, David might be too much even for him to handle, but he has them and Division 3. Like I said, it's so interesting that the tables have turned so heavily against David. Like I said, him being the antagonist, him kind of being on the run, him being hunted, it's quite an interesting twist I wasn't expecting. So, I don't know. Those are just some of my thoughts. We'll just ultimately have to wait and see what they do with season 3 in the end. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good